You remember the sound before you remember the view. The seagulls crying above, the boardwalk creaking under your feet, the ocean breathing like it knew your name. Maybe it was summer 72 or 85 or 99. The air was salt and sunscreen. The world was smaller, simpler, softer. You can still feel the sand between your toes, the heat from the pavement, the taste of melting ice cream before the tide rolled in. Back then, seaside resorts were magic. Every family had their spot, their beach, their motel, their secret stretch of coast that felt like it belonged only to them. Cape May, Atlantic City before the casinos. Myrtle Beach before the billboards. Coney Island when it still smelled like popcorn and ocean. Each place carried its own heartbeat, its own sound, but the world changed. The crowds moved on. The motels closed. The laughter faded. The signs rusted. The beaches that once held generations became quiet, waiting for footsteps that never came back. You remember the postcards, the Polaroids, the neon lights glowing against the water at night. You remember running barefoot, chasing waves, chasing time. Those places didn't just fade, they took a piece of us with them. Tonight, we're going back to the 15 seaside resorts that Americans once loved, but now only remember. Because the ocean never forgets. It just waits for us to listen again. Close your eyes and you can still hear it. The waves crashing in slow rhythm, the muffled laughter of families unpacking coolers, the soft buzz of radios playing songs that belonged to that exact summer and never another. The air smelled like salt, coppertone, and fried dough. You can almost feel the sticky fingers, the gritty sand between your toes, the hum of a world that felt endlessly alive. For many Americans, the seaside wasn't just a vacation. It was a ritual, a return. Every year, like clockwork, the car would fill up with bags, towels, and snacks, and families would head toward the coast. The trip itself was part of the memory. The long highway stretches, the hand-painted signs promising saltwater taffy, the first glimpse of blue on the horizon that made every mile worth it. The first stop for most? Atlantic City, New Jersey. Long before casinos and neon chaos, Atlantic City was America's dream of escape. In the early 1900s, it was called the Queen of Resorts. Grand hotels lined the boardwalk, each one a promise of luxury and life's simple joy. By the 1950s, families from every corner of the country flocked there. You'd rent a room with ocean views, walk barefoot across the planks, and hear the distant whistle of a carousel carried by the wind. You remember the smell of caramel popcorn? The vendors shouting, the fortune tellers reading palms near the pier. It was loud, colorful, alive. The kind of place where time didn't exist, only moments. Atlantic City wasn't just a destination. It was a personality. It defined what summer felt like for a generation that needed something to look forward to after long winters and longer weeks. Every kid had a seashell collection from that beach. Every couple had a photo under that same pier. Every parent remembered carrying sleeping children back to the car, sand still stuck to their legs. Then came Coney Island, New York. If Atlantic City was the queen, Coney was the heartbeat. You could feel it the moment you arrived, the noise, the smell, the sense that you were standing in the middle of a story that never stopped. The boardwalk stretched like a promise. The cyclone roared overhead. The waves slapped against the rocks. And everywhere, people smiled like they'd finally reached somewhere that understood them. Coney Island was never about perfection. It was about life, messy, noisy, real. Families picnicked on the sand beside strangers. Teenagers held hands on rides that creaked like old stories. The smell of hot dogs from Nathan's Famous cut through the ocean air. Every sound, every laugh, every scream from the rides mixed into something you could only describe as summer itself. If you grew up anywhere near the East Coast, you had a Coney Island summer. You remember the feel of wood under your feet as you walked the boardwalk barefoot, the blinding sun reflecting off the ocean, the sound of coins dropping into the claw machine. You can still taste the salt from the fries, the way the wind whipped your hair as the roller coaster climbed toward the sky. But Coney began to change. Slowly at first, a few high mile size, a few shops closing, a few rides taken down. Then faster, the shine faded, the laughter thinned. The crowds got older, quieter, until only the sound of the waves and gulls remained. The same waves that had seen it all, love, loss, childhood, and everything in between. Further down the coast, another kind of seaside magic thrived. Cape May, New Jersey. Unlike the noise of Atlantic City, Cape May was gentler. It was calm, elegant, timeless. The kind of place where you'd wake to the sound of the sea through open windows. The air felt different there, softer, slower. The Victorian houses painted in pastel blues and pinks stood like memories that refused to fade. Families returned year after year, staying in the same bed and breakfasts, walking the same streets, waving to the same shop owners. It wasn't about excitement. It was about belonging. The waves were familiar, the sand predictable. You could measure your life by the summers you spent there. In the mornings, the fishermen left early. By noon, kids ran along the beach collecting shells. By evening, the sky turned gold and couples walked barefoot, the world quiet except for the sound of water brushing the shore. Cape May was where America went to breathe, to remember what peace felt like before the noise took over. But even here, time caught up. The motels turned into condos. The mom-and-pop diners closed. The world moved faster, and Cape May stayed still, until the stillness became a kind of disappearance. Not gone, exactly. Just forgotten by those who once swore they'd never let it go. Further south, Virginia Beach had its own story. In the 1960s, it was the family escape of the South. Long stretches of open sand, motels with neon signs that buzzed through the night, boardwalk shops selling postcards, shells, and homemade fudge. The military crowd mixed with families, teenagers, and newlyweds. Everyone fit in. Everyone belonged. The hotels were simple. The air was thick. The nights were warm. You could walk along the pier with an ice cream in one hand and your shoes in the other, the boards creaking softly under your steps. Virginia Beach was where life slowed down just enough for you to notice it. The laughter was softer, the water clearer, the feeling simpler. Then the highways got busier. The crowds shifted to bigger resorts, newer attractions, fancier names, and the places that once defined the American summer began to blur together in memory. There was Ocean City, Maryland, too, a long boardwalk lined with arcades and saltwater taffy shops, the sound of rides mixed with the crash of waves. The kind of place that smelled like every summer of your youth. Fried dough, suntan oil, ocean spray. You'd play skee ball until your fingers hurt, then walk home under streetlights, sand clinging to your legs. Ocean City had charm. Real, imperfect charm. It was loud, crowded, alive. The kind of place where every stranger felt like a neighbor. Where you could lose track of time, but never lose yourself. When people say those seaside resorts are gone, they're wrong. They're not gone. They're just quieter now, waiting. The ocean never changes, not really. The boardwalk might be cracked, the hotels might be empty, but if you stand there long enough, the past shows itself. You hear the laughter, faint but certain. You smell the popcorn, the sunscreen, the promise of youth. Because these places weren't just vacations, they were backdrops for our stories. First loves, family photos, childhoods that felt endless. They were America's summer soul, written in salt and sunlight. And maybe that's why they still matter. Because even if we've moved on, the ocean hasn't. It remembers everything. You remember the sound, the soft rattle of roller coaster chains, the bark of vendors shouting over the ocean wind, the dull creak of wooden planks beneath hundreds of bare feet. The boardwalk was alive, a living artery that carried America's heartbeat straight to the sea. It didn't matter if it was Coney Island, Ocean City, or Myrtle Beach. They all had the same rhythm. The same pulse. Every family had a ritual. You'd drop your bags at the motel, shake the sand out of your shoes, and walk straight to the boardwalk. That first night always felt like forever. The lights glowed brighter than you remembered, the air thicker, the laughter louder. You'd buy a funnel cake you couldn't finish, stand in line for a ride you were too scared to take, and win a stuffed bear you'd lose by morning. The boardwalk wasn't just a place. It was an emotion, excitement wrapped in salt air and neon. For kids, it was freedom. For adults, it was memory. For everyone, it was escape. And yet, somewhere along the way, the sound began to fade. It started slow. A few closed shops. An arcade with broken machines. The old carousel that stopped turning because the music box jammed and no one came to fix it. The laughter that once filled the air became scattered, replaced by silence and wind. Ocean City, Maryland, was one of the first to change. Once, the boardwalk there stretched like a dream. Endless shops selling saltwater taffy, frozen custard, and cheap sunglasses that never survived the summer. The scent of caramel corn mixed with ocean spray. The kind of smell that made you feel 12 again, no matter how old you were. But time crept in quietly. Chain stores replaced local shops. The games that once gave out goldfish in plastic bags started giving out nothing at all. The music from the arcades turned digital, louder but emptier. The boardwalk looked the same, but it didn't feel the same. That's how nostalgia works. It's not about the buildings or the lights. It's about the feeling that lived there, the one that never comes back the same way twice. Further down the coast, Myrtle Beach, South Carolina, had its golden era. In the 70s and 80s, it was the place where the South met summer. Families from Georgia, North Carolina, and Tennessee packed their station wagons and headed east. The smell of seafood, the buzz of mini golf courses, and the glow of motel signs became a symphony of simple happiness. You remember the sound of the pier at night, waves slapping against the pilings, guitars strumming somewhere in the distance, laughter spilling from beach bars that stayed open until the tide said, "Stop." Myrtle Beach was where kids turned into teenagers, and teenagers turned into memories. The boardwalk was alive with first loves and late-night talks, with cheap fireworks and big dreams. Then came time again. The wooden piers aged. The mom-and-pop motels couldn't keep up with resorts. The old amusement park shut down. Even the air felt quieter, like it had forgotten how to hum. But the hardest change came for Rehoboth Beach, Delaware, the family beach that never pretended to be more than it was. In the 1960s and 70s, it was where the East Coast's working class went to find a piece of paradise. You could rent a cottage for a week, walk to the boardwalk for pizza, and spend the night watching the waves roll under moonlight. The arcade was small. The rides were simple. But the memories? Huge. Every generation left a layer of laughter in that sand. Parents returned with their own kids, pointing at places they swore were bigger, brighter, better. Then the storms came, one after another, years apart. They tore the boardwalks apart, took the piers, the stands, the rides. The beach rebuilt. It always does, but the scars stayed. The smell of new wood never felt the same as the old planks soaked in time and salt. That's the quiet truth of nostalgia. You can rebuild the place, but you can't rebuild the years that gave it meaning. Out west, the story played out differently. Santa Cruz, California. The boardwalk there wasn't just famous, it was iconic. It had roller coasters, cotton candy, sunshine that never seemed to end. For kids, it was a playground. For adults, it was the soundtrack of youth they couldn't quite let go of. You can picture it now. Surfboards stacked against beach walls, girls with windblown hair holding sodas, guys trying to act braver than they felt. The Santa Cruz boardwalk was California, bottled into a single stretch of wood and sea. But when the crowds shifted to bigger cities, to Los Angeles, to San Diego, to places that promised more, Santa Cruz stayed still. The rides still ran, the games still blinked, but the feeling changed. You could stand there, surrounded by the same lights, the same sea, and still feel the emptiness of absence. It's not decay that hurts, it's stillness. The realization that the world moved on, and somehow your favorite places didn't. Boardwalks used to be full of sound. Radios playing, seagulls crying, Ferris wheels turning, lovers whispering. Now, the sound that fills them is wind, soft, constant, lonely. You can walk those same planks today and still feel it, that hum, that vibration of everything that used to happen there. It's faint, like a memory that refuses to die. Maybe that's the magic of these places. They don't disappear, they just wait. The ocean keeps whispering the same rhythm it always has. The tide keeps rolling in, washing over footprints, making room for new ones, and if you stand there long enough, maybe you can hear it. The echo of children running, the laughter of people long gone, the carousel music that once played for you. The boardwalks faded, the lights dimmed, but they didn't die. They live in us, in the way we remember them, in the way we ache for a world that once smelled like sugar and salt and second chances. There's a point in every generation when summer stops being a season and turns into a memory. For your parents, it was the smell of ocean air through a rolled-down window. For you, it was the way the light hit the water just before dusk, when time itself seemed to slow. Every wave felt like it carried a secret, that the world was softer back then, that life had a pause button. You can trace that feeling to the seaside resorts that shaped it. Wildwood, New Jersey, Panama City Beach, Florida, Galveston, Texas. These weren't just places on a map. They were chapters in the story of being American, where families came to remember what togetherness felt like before life scattered them. Wildwood in the 60s was electricity. The doo-wop motels, painted in colors that didn't exist anywhere else. Turquoise, coral, lemon yellow. Each one looked like a dream from a postcard rack. The signs glowed neon at night, and the boardwalk stretched for miles, echoing with the sound of jukeboxes and laughter. You'd rent a room, unpack your bags, and immediately head for the beach. Radios played the Supremes. The lifeguard chairs gleamed white in the sun. You felt young, even if you weren't. The thing about Wildwood was how alive it felt. Even the sand seemed to hum. You could buy a hot dog for $1, win a prize at the pier, and watch fireworks light up the sky from your motel balcony. It didn't matter who you were or where you came from. On that boardwalk, everyone belonged. Then came the years when the crowds thinned. Families stopped returning. The motels aged. The paint peeled. The neon dimmed. People drove farther south instead, to bigger beaches, newer hotels, grander promises. Wildwood became a memory long before it became a ghost. Panama City Beach was different, louder, freer. It was the South's playground, where the ocean turned emerald and the days lasted forever. Spring breakers came and never really left. The smell of coconut oil mixed with salt and beer. Music blasted from convertibles on the highway. The beach stretched like a promise you could never keep. For years, Panama City was pure joy. Imperfect, reckless, beautiful. Kids learned to swim there. Teenagers learned to love there. Parents found a version of peace they didn't have to pay for. The waves rolled in like laughter. Then, slowly, the world changed. Chain hotels swallowed the old cottages. The mom-and-pop seafood joints turned into polished franchises. The laughter that once echoed across the pier was drowned out by the sound of engines and construction. The beach was still there, but it didn't feel there. And then there was Galveston, Texas, the pride of the Gulf before hurricanes came for it again and again. Galveston had a different rhythm. Slower, southern, poetic. The seawall stretched for miles. The pier glowed at night, and every summer evening smelled like salt and shrimp and rain. The kind of air you could taste. You remember walking that pier as a kid. The boards slick from the ocean mist. The sound of the waves mixing with the creak of rides. The glow of the lights bouncing off the dark water below. It felt endless. Like the ocean, and the laughter might never stop. But the storms came. They always do. Each one took a little more of the island's soul. The hotels rebuilt. The rides reopened. But something in the air had changed. The salt carried a quiet sadness now, the weight of memory. It wasn't just weather that took those places away. It was time. It was everything that came after. Convenience, speed, distraction. The world stopped lingering. Vacations became schedules, not escapes. People stopped collecting seashells and started collecting photos, the kind that vanish when a phone dies. But you still remember the summers when nothing else mattered, when your biggest worry was a sunburn, when the world began and ended at the water's edge. The last golden age of seaside America was in the 1980s. Families still packed up station wagons. Kids still ran barefoot on hot pavement. Every beach town from Maine to Mississippi was alive. But quietly, it was ending. The big resorts were coming. The old piers started closing. The little beach towns couldn't compete. And so they began to fade, one by one. Virginia Beach, Ocean City, Daytona. Each one watched its crowds move on. Not because the ocean changed, but because people did. You can't blame them. The world got busier. The work weeks got longer. The vacations got shorter. The idea of summer itself started to shrink. But somewhere inside you, that summer still exists. The one where you woke up to sunlight through thin motel curtains. Where you could hear the ocean before you saw it. Where every sound, every gull, every laugh, every wave felt like it was speaking just to you. Sometimes you catch it again. In a song, in a smell, in the way the ocean sounds on a quiet night. That's nostalgia's trick. It doesn't ask permission. It just shows up, uninvited, reminding you of who you were before the noise began. And maybe that's what we lost when the seaside faded. Not just the places, but the patience to feel them. The summer wasn't about perfection. It was about pause, about the way the sun felt on your back, the sand between your fingers, the hum of conversation under the stars. Now, when you visit those towns, you can still find pieces of that world. The neon signs still flicker. The motels still stand, even if the paint is chipped. And if you listen closely, you can still hear the laughter. Faint, but there. Because the truth is, the summer didn't vanish. It just moved from the shore to your memory. There's a moment, standing on an empty beach, when you realize the ocean has seen everything. Every laugh, every kiss, every promise made under summer skies. It remembers what we forget. The tide keeps secrets, rolling over places that once felt eternal. Resorts, boardwalks, piers, motels, all the pieces of a world that shaped who we were. When people talk about seaside America, they remember the noise, the rides, the music, the joy. But the end was quiet. It didn't come with headlines or announcements. It came in silence. One shuttered store at a time, one dark motel sign, one forgotten beach chair half buried in sand. The ocean stayed, but the people drifted away. Daytona Beach, Florida, was once the capital of American summer. The roar of engines during Speed Week, the shimmer of sun on chrome, the sound of rock music bleeding into the surf. Families filled the sand by day. The teenagers took it by night. Bonfires, radios, late-night swimming, the smell of salt and gasoline mixing into something unforgettable. Daytona didn't just sell vacation, it sold freedom. It was where rules loosened, where time felt endless, where the world seemed built for you and your friends. But over time, the shine dulled. The beach grew crowded, the traffic heavier, the air thicker. The city tried to hold on to its magic, but progress has a way of rewriting joy. Hotels replaced motels. Chain restaurants replaced seafood shacks. The laughter turned into noise. The horizon stayed the same, but everything in front of it changed. Further north, Old Orchard Beach, Maine, fought the same slow fade. Once it was the summer escape of the working class. Wooden roller coasters, Ferris wheels, and pier fries that tasted like childhood. The nights were cold, but the spirit was warm. Couples danced under string lights. Families shared blankets on the sand. You could smell the salt long before you saw the sea. Then the fires came. The storms. The rebuilds. Every time Old Orchard stood back up and lost a little more of its past, the old piers gave way to steel and concrete. The rides felt newer but emptier. The ghosts of laughter still lived there, faint but stubborn, carried in the wind that whips across the Atlantic. Farther west, on the Great Lakes, places like Grand Haven, Michigan, and Erie, Pennsylvania, offered a different kind of coast. Smaller waves, but the same heart. Wooden docks, family cottages, the sound of boats creaking in the harbor. In the 60s and 70s, those lakeside towns thrived. Kids caught minnows in buckets. Parents grilled hot dogs on porches. Nights ended with sparklers and stories. The water glowed under moonlight like a liquid memory. Then the highways came. The malls, the distractions. The lakes grew quieter. The beaches emptier. The memories scattered like shells pulled back by the tide. You can still find the remnants if you look closely. The hand-painted motel signs, the faded photos behind diner counters, the sound of seagulls echoing over quiet water. They're pieces of a past that refuses to drown. It wasn't the ocean that took these places. It was time, and everything time brings with it. Rising costs, hurricanes, changing tastes, and most of all, forgetting. The truth is, we stopped returning. We stopped repeating, and those resorts, those towns built on return, couldn't survive without us. But there's something about the sea that never gives up on memory. Walk down the boardwalk of an empty town in the off-season, and you'll feel it. The hum beneath the silence, the faint music of a carousel long gone, the smell of salt and sugar baked into the wood. You'll see the names still carved into the planks, initials inside hearts, dates from summers that ended decades ago. Proof that someone once loved this place enough to leave a mark. That's the thing about nostalgia. It's not sadness. It's recognition. It's standing somewhere forgotten and realizing you never really left. Even the storms couldn't wash that away. When hurricanes tore through Galveston, when nor'easters chewed at the Jersey shore, when floods swallowed motels in the Carolinas, the people rebuilt. They always rebuilt. Not for money, not for tourists, but because the beach still meant something. The seaside isn't just geography. It's identity. It's the sound of childhood and the smell of youth. It's the place where people learned how to let go, even when they didn't want to. The tide takes everything eventually. The laughter, the signs, the boardwalks, even the footprints. But it never takes the feeling, because the feeling doesn't live in the sand. It lives in you, in the memories of sunburned noses, cheap sunglasses, dripping ice cream cones, and the hum of cicadas that played like background music. You can still find it if you look. Drive down the coast sometime, pull off the main road, find the small towns that don't make the brochures, walk their quiet streets, step under the cracked boards of their forgotten piers. You'll see it, a flicker of what was, a ghost of laughter in the wind. The world moved on, but the ocean didn't. It's still there, breathing, waiting. It's seen you before. It remembers your footprints. It knows the sound of your name when you whispered it into the wind long ago, and when you stand there, you'll realize something. The seaside never needed to be perfect. It just needed to exist. Because those places, Atlantic City, Coney Island, Wildwood, Galveston, Myrtle Beach, Old Orchard, Daytona, they weren't just vacations. They were mirrors. They showed us who we were when life was simpler, when joy was found in small things, when time stretched instead of sprinted. They're quieter now, weathered but not gone. The ocean still touches their shores every day, washing over what's left and whispering the same words it's always said. You are here. The tide always returns, not to erase, but to remind. The seaside isn't gone. It lives in memory, in scent and sound. The boardwalk lights may be dim, but the feeling they gave you, that heartbeat of summer, still flickers, waiting for you to notice. In our next story, we're heading inland to the diners, drive-ins, and roadside motels that once defined America's open road before GPS and chain stores took their place. And if you want to keep these memories alive, there's a small corner waiting for you, our free newsletter. It's where we collect forgotten places, lost sounds, and stories that still breathe. The link's below. Until next time, keep the coast close to your heart. The ocean remembers you, even when you forget yourself.